The pressure for brevity is growing. Mr Ian Murray.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I will be very brief to move new clause 17, which I will be intending to put to the will of the House later on this afternoon. I won't repeat what the member for Rushcliffe has already said in support of my new clause 17, and I very much appreciate his support for that, and indeed the comments made by the Right Honourable Member for Beaconsfield. The reason I've placed new clause 17 is quite simply to provide some clarity and transparency and indeed some honesty to this debate. We already have a very strong baseline of what the single market and the customs union provides to the UK economy, and this is just a way of comparing what we currently have to what the deal that the government comes back with is on the table before we put the piece of legislation to this House to invoke our leaving the European Union. It's a very straightforward clause to do so, and the reason I've placed the clause is also to have another discussion about the single market and the customs union. I intervened on my honourable friend from Nottingham East to make the point that all these complicated issues with regards to the island of Ireland, as an example, which is probably the most complicated issue, can be resolved by continuing participation in the single market and the customs union. And the key point I wish to make to the House, and I hope the Treasury bench reflect on this, is, and Michelle Barnier has already said this clearly, is that the red lines that the government have set themselves are completely and utterly incompatible with the conclusion that they wish to reach. And until they are honest about that with the public and this House, we will never be able to move forward. And that's partly the reason why the EU keep demanding from the UK an explanation of what the final destination is, what the UK actually wants from this process. The Prime Minister's Florence speech and indeed the Lancaster House speech set up a set of criteria that is now completely and utterly undeliverable with the red lines that have been set. To take the customs union and the single market off the table so early as a red line was, in my view, the wrong decision to make, and we need the government to put to this House, to both Houses, a full independently assessed analysis of the impact on the economy of the United Kingdom, comparing two conclusions to this debate: staying in the single market and the customs union, or coming out and looking at the deal that the government proposes. The reason the government will resist this new clause is not through any principle. It's because they know that any negotiated deal that they come back with from the European Union will not be as good as the deal we have today. And that will be saying to the public that they will be bringing back a deal that makes the country poorer. That, in my view, is a dereliction of duty from any government, and why the government should put their money where their mouth is, support my new clause 17, and put in black and white the consequences of this country refusing and failing and no longer participating in the single market and the customs union.